Wow, oh, it's new and beautiful. Looks like a nice, usable house. This is our cherished new home, meticulously planned and built by my husband and me, a newly married couple. It was our parents-in-law, both of them, who carelessly dropped their muddy, old suitcase right in the middle of our meticulously cleaned living room. To our surprise, they were moving from today. They announced they lived with us. I was shocked and confronted my husband. Why is this happening without any discussion? Don't worry, my mom's here to help with the housework, right? We'll get used to it soon, and supporting each other as a family is what matters. There's no problem. My husband, heavily influenced by his parents, didn't seem to consider my refusal at all. He grew up in a grand, old American-style house, and frankly, he has always seen the role of a wife as nothing more than a convenient housekeeper. A viewpoint shared by his parents. I had endured weekly dinners at their house, where my father-in-law would openly call me a disobedient woman. Furthermore, we were short on rooms, so my husband ordered me to vacate mine. You can sleep in the yard, it's lucky for you since you won't have to deal with my parents, he said with a smirk. Holding back my tears, I rushed into my room. And then, when I returned, dragging a heavy suitcase just as burdensome as my in-laws, my husband and his parents were shocked. I announced loudly, "I'm going back to my parents' house, enjoy yourselves." I am Mirabelle. Currently, I work in the product development department of a health food company. I'm 32, and my husband, Tom, also 32, works in the sales department of the same company. Tom is a very thoughtful person, a hidden gem in any team he joins, always playing a supportive role. He's a top performer in our department, a husband I'm proud of. Our first meeting was at a departmental mixer. Dressed up, I caught his attention with the antique ring on my little finger. He was intrigued by my hobby of collecting antique jewelry. He admitted to thinking rings were just flashy, gem-studded pieces from his family's collection, so I introduced him to more vintage designs. Soon, we started going out for meals after work and on weekends, quickly progressing to a relationship, followed by a proposal in less than 6 months, celebrated by many colleagues and superiors. We had a dream even before marriage. Building our own home. Our goal was to contribute equally, take out a loan, and create a small but detailed home of our own. I'd like a spacious living room, maybe a yard, thinking of kids and pets in the future. We might not have a big budget, but I'll work harder than ever, save more, do whatever it takes. We had many requests about the house. We have a certain location in mind, but we need to decide on the land based on transportation, shopping, imagine when we have children, the design of the exterior, and other points that each of us has that we can't miss. We had meticulously planned and worked tirelessly with a design firm to create our dream home. Though the plot was introduced by a real estate agent near my parents' house, they are quite kind and won't trouble you. No worries, they were nice during our visit. But your mom's cooking skills are a bit intimidating. His family used to own a lot of land in the area. Now mostly sold off, except for their residents. Luckily, due to these connections, we got priority in securing our plot. Since we searched through connections, the location ended up being a plot close to my in-laws' house. I didn't have many opportunities to meet my in-laws outside of formal greetings. Because of this, I felt the need to be cautious and was quite nervous about how to interact with them. However, my in-laws always seemed cheerful and kind, and they appeared genuinely happy whenever I visited. My father-in-law was the breadwinner with a strong sense of responsibility, and my mother-in-law was a dedicated homemaker. When they heard about our plans for a new home, they were excited and supportive, and I thought they were wonderful parents-in-law. As our house plans progressed to the construction phase, my husband and I decided to visit his parents' house. Their house was nearby, though not next door. We wanted to make a good impression early on. Their house was a large, traditional American-style home. And I was always overwhelmed by its size. They greeted us with smiles as usual. Building your own house is a big step, but I'm proud of my son. Our house is old, so a new, clean home is something to admire. Building a house is exciting, isn't it? Mirabelle, we're looking forward to it too. That's how my in-laws both gave me their support. Our current residence was a bit far from there. My husband, Tom, suggested, "It's gonna be a while till the house is finished, but how about we spend more time together in the meantime?" I readily agreed. Of course, let's do that. Tom had a good relationship with his parents, and they were always up to date with his business trips and weekend plans. So, we started getting invited over on weekends that coincided with our days off. The visits were for simple reasons like going to the mall or having meals at their home. However, I felt there was a limit. For example, I would get calls from my mother-in-law on a Friday night saying, "Mirabelle, thank you for the last time. Next time, could you drive us to look for a purse as a gift for a friend? It would be a big help. Also, we're inviting you over for lunch on Sunday. We're getting some nice fish, so bring Tom along. Could you bring a dish? I'm good at fried and stewed dishes and salads, so please bring something else. And about your clothes." She not only talked at length, but also filled up our weekend schedule and made specific requests. I wondered if dealing with in-laws was always this demanding and secretly asked my friends for advice, but all I got were comments blaming the oddity of my in-laws. I began to dread visiting them and felt increasingly trapped. As my work in the product development department got busier and the frequent visits to my in-laws' house fueled my mistrust. One day, I mustered the courage to decline over the phone. "I feel bad visiting so often, and I also want to have some quiet time on the weekends. I'm embarrassed to say, but with work, I can hardly keep up with chores at home." I tried to deflect the conversation, but my mother-in-law was unyielding. Insisting, "Don't be shy, we're family now," and I couldn't escape that weekend's plans. Reluctantly, I went to my in-laws' house with a heavy heart. To make matters worse, my husband knew I had tried to decline the invitation. Throughout the car ride, he scolded me. Mom was sad, Dad might say something, blaming me. At their house, with dishes spread across the dining table, the topic came up again. I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles. Then my father-in-law pointed at my mother-in-law and said, "Why don't you go help out? It's not too much for her. That would be too much for Mom. That's not a problem. She can just finish the housework during the week and then come clean up your apartment. She's a homemaker, after all, she's got free time." I was surprised by his suggestion and even more so by his tone. His attitude towards my mother-in-law, a homemaker, was filled with misconceptions and harsh assumptions. I was at a loss for words, feeling like he was a boss issuing orders rather than a family member. What was terrifying was that my mother-in-law just smiled and nodded, as if my husband's instructions were the most natural thing in the world. I felt a chill down my spine. Thankfully, I managed to fend off the suggestion that she take over our household chores. In stark contrast to her compliance, my repeated refusals made my father-in-law mutter, "What a disobedient daughter-in-law." I could feel my irritation rising, and my heart raced. My father-in-law quickly became sullen, and my mother-in-law scrambled to cater to his needs. The tension in the air was suffocating, and I quietly resolved to stop visiting my in-laws. The following week, when my mother-in-law called, I tried to excuse myself, saying, "I have other plans and can't come." If the new house was completed and they had to live near their in-laws, they would have had to see each other every day, not just every week off. The horrible thought filled me with dread. Why not? Haven't you finished your chores? Maybe it would have been better if I had helped out, like my husband suggested. She persisted, but I had my response ready. "I have plans with a friend who attended our wedding. We're going out as a thank you. So, I can't come today, but I'll visit when our schedules align. I'll make sure to convey my thanks to my friend." I rattled off my excuse and managed to end the call. The promise was a lie, but feeling unsafe at home, I quickly left. From that day on, I found excuses to avoid visiting my in-laws. Despite this strained relationship, our new home was completed. My husband, Tom, and I were thrilled with our sparkling new house and took great care in cleaning every corner. However, not even half a month after moving in, my mother-in-law summoned me unexpectedly. Her tone was serious. "It's something I must tell you. I know you don't plan to come to our house on your days off, but this is something I just have to tell you." "Okay, I'll come right over," I replied, though it pained me to do so. Rushing over, I found my mother-in-law eager to explain the household chores at her home. The basics are daily sweeping of the entrance and garden. Normally it's just dry wiping, but on weekends we do a thorough mopping. Plus, there's shopping and managing the household budget. "Oh, you can change things to suit you." She smiled kindly, but I was baffled by her explanation. It was as if she was discussing how we would share chores if I moved in with them. "Wait a minute. Why are you telling me all this?" I wondered what she expected me to do with this information about cleaning supplies and kitchen use. When I asked, her face clouded over. "You married into our family, Mirabelle, so you need to follow our ways. Don't you know that yet? Don't you want to contribute to your husband's family?" Then she asked, "How long are you planning to keep working?" I was speechless, having had no intention of quitting my job. It seemed she expected me to eventually leave my job, become a homemaker, and help out with their chores. Stunned by this unexpected turn, I firmly stated, "If that's the case, I'm leaving. I understand my duties as a wife and will help out where I can, but my priority is my time with my husband. I have work in our own household chores, so I can't help out here." With that, I left my in-laws' house. I immediately protested to Tom, but he took his parents' side and wouldn't listen. "I didn't marry into this family to do their housework," I said, but he just looked annoyed. "Are you always this selfish? My parents can't be wrong. Can't you get along with them?" I was speechless and could only stare back at him. I was shocked not only by the vast difference in thinking between me and my in-laws but also by my husband Tom's refusal to listen to my views. He's usually not like this, but when it comes to his parents, especially his father, he seems to change completely, adhering to whatever they say as absolute. The decision to build our own home was initially suggested by his father, who wanted to maintain good relations with a real estate agent through purchasing land. The word divorce involuntarily flashed through my mind. But with Tom frequently away on business trips, I was often left alone at home. Plus, there was the fact that we had just built our dream home. I decided to observe the situation a little longer, as long as I could keep a distance from his parents. However, I made it clear to Tom that I didn't want any involvement with his parents. The relationship with your family is quite different from a normal mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. Honestly, I don't want any more involvement. I won't be visiting your parents' house for chores, and I have no intention of living with them. Please remember that." I expressed this earnestly. I expected him to get angry, but surprisingly, Tom backed down, saying, "Okay, I got it. I'll handle things with my parents from now on." A month later, on a weekend, I was preparing lunch at home. Then Tom, who had been out since morning, returned with multiple voices accompanying him. I was surprised to see my in-laws enter the living room with large bags. "Oh, it's so nice and clean because it's new. It looks like a great, user-friendly house," exclaimed my father-in-law with a loud laugh. Tom seemed proud as he showed them around the living room, carrying heavy luggage like carry-on cases and backpacks. When I confronted him, he began to say something unbelievable. He announced that his parents were moving in with us from today. "What? Why? Without any discussion?" I've been thinking about this for a while. Since Mirabelle doesn't want to deal with my parents, I've been mediating. "Don't worry, my mom's here for the housework, right? We'll get used to it, and it's good to support each other, no problem," he said, as if he never doubted I would welcome living with his parents. I felt a sense of despair. I was foreseeing a difficult life living with in-laws whose perspectives were so different from mine. I was determined to avoid living with them, but apparently, our house and land had already been sold without my knowledge. The preparations for their move were made entirely behind my back. They only brought their immediate belongings, and their larger furniture was stored in a storage unit. I had just told Tom that I wanted to minimize interaction with his parents, and now I felt utterly betrayed. Why did you decide this without telling me? Why proceed unilaterally without any discussion? Don't you consider my feelings? This is about our future life as a family, we should have discussed it together. But Tom was indifferent. He looked at me as if I was a nuisance. But if my parents want to live with us, what can I do? Think of it as a trial period. Since he didn't want to be involved, I handled the sale and the moving preparations. A trial period? The house is already sold, what are you talking about? Doing this behind my back is like a betrayal. Complaining after marrying into the family? You're the wife, show some understanding and patience. This is my house. Tom snapped, his logic baffling me as he raised his voice. I was stunned. I realized that in his eyes, my thoughts and opinions seemed irrelevant. Ignoring me, he began to show his parents upstairs. Our house has 3 private rooms. Tom's study, my room, and our shared bedroom. We had planned to give my room to our future child. Wondering where he was guiding them, my husband then bluntly said to me, "Get your stuff out of the room." I wasn't surprised, but I was visibly upset. My mom will use your room. Dad gets the bedroom. Why don't you sleep in the yard? You don't want to deal with them, right? It was clear that if each of the in-laws were to use a room, there wouldn't be enough rooms available. The smirk on his face as he suggested I sleep in the yard made it clear this was a well-thought-out way to hassle me. I felt suffocated by the rejection from the man I had loved. While my father-in-law smirked at me in the background. Tom was clearly following his parents' instructions. It was conceivable that he was harassing me because he was told to do so. He chose to side with them, not to protect me. This realization brought a renewed sense of despair, and I could only look at him silently. As he opened my room and demanded me to hurry up, I felt like there was no point in arguing. I entered my room, grabbed the heavy suitcase I had prepared in advance, and left at a speed that took Tom by surprise. I'm going back to my parents' house. Enjoy yourselves, I told them. I had kept my belongings in order so that I could return to my parents' house at any time. Now, anything left in my room could be disposed of without concern. Tom and his parents seemed startled, not expecting me to leave, and they tried to stop me. My mother-in-law even accused me of pushing housework onto her, but I knew that was her intention all along. Having lived with such a father-in-law and with Tom before our marriage, it seemed to me that she had no love for her family. Instead of fighting back, she had hoped to find a new target in me, the daughter-in-law. Ignoring all their schemes, I headed back to my parents' house. Though surprised, my parents understood the situation and showed anger toward Tom and his parents. Feeling supported, I was relieved until Tom contacted me. He was apparently coming to my parents' house with his parents to take me back, saying, "I'll forgive you, so come back." Anticipating a discussion at my parents' house, I made a call to a certain place. With my parents present, the 6 of us sat around a table. Especially my father, upon hearing what I had gone through, glared at Tom and his parents with utmost anger. Yet, Tom and his parents showed no remorse. Instead, my father-in-law took the lead, accusing me of being an unreasonable daughter-in-law who wouldn't contribute to her husband's family. My father glared at them in disbelief. "Mirabelle, you should behave more sensibly as a wife. You're still working instead of dedicating yourself to your husband and his family. You should be grateful that we even tolerate that. And returning to your parents' house, who do you think you are? The complaints you have are nothing compared to the duties of a wife. Why don't you try harder and be more supportive at home?" My mother-in-law added, echoing my father-in-law's criticisms. With Tom interjecting, exactly what my parents are saying. The conversation in my parents' living room became increasingly chaotic. I tried to convey my feelings while enduring their words, but it only added fuel to the fire. Each time I spoke, their retorts grew more intense. Suddenly, my father spoke up. "I can't believe you're forcing her to live with you. She might be your wife, but she's still my daughter. If you're saying she's not good enough, we're happy to take her back. Let's go for a divorce." Encouraged by my father, I brought out the divorce papers that I had printed from a website before their arrival. My part was already filled out. All that was needed was Tom's signature. Seeing this, both my father-in-law and Tom started to get angry. "Don't be stupid. You think this is a solution? A wife should not think she can just divorce. Taking such extreme measures, you're a coward." My father-in-law yelled, while Tom, looking annoyed at me, followed. "We haven't even had a proper discussion yet. Can't you be a bit more rational?" This is why I hate it when women can't have a logical conversation. They continued with their snide remarks, trying to destroy the family, huh? So arrogant, not caring about the place or situation. They said they wanted to discuss, but it was clear they weren't in a state to have a reasonable conversation. I had already given up on talking and was only focused on getting Tom to sign the divorce papers. But it wasn't just their terrible attitudes that led to this. "I have something to ask your mother," I said, pulling out my smartphone to show a video. My mother-in-law's face, who had been quiet until then, visibly changed upon seeing the screen. It was no surprise she recognized the content. It showed her opening drawers in my room. Since I had started refusing to do chores at their house and limited my interaction, I noticed items gradually disappearing from my room. The drawer contains a large box for antique jewelry, which was the conversation starter between my husband and me. I purchased them for their design, so overall, they are not very expensive, but some are valuable enough to be kept under lock and key. Stolen were not only the visibly expensive pieces of fine jewelry but also several antique rings and accessories. And then, the contents of the locked box. Each item is a treasured part of my collection, and the realization that someone has been breaking into my room sends a chill down my spine. I considered the culprit, but it seemed unlikely that my husband would target the antiques for monetary reasons. The prices vary, and since my husband, with whom I share household finances, has never reprimanded me, I've been freely collecting them. He knows I've been buying mostly inexpensive items. However, the disappearance of the jewelry with gemstones clearly indicates the motive was to cash them in. Could it be that someone was let into the house while I was away? Realizing someone had been entering my room, I bought a small camera and placed it hidden in the room. After setting it up hidden in the shadow of the furniture, it captured the culprit's image within just a few weeks. At a time when no one was supposed to be at home, the person who appeared in my room was my mother-in-law. Someone could enter without my knowledge only if my husband had lent them the key or given them a spare, most likely. My mother-in-law used it to target the times the house was empty, stealing small amounts of precious metals from the jewelry box. When I confronted her with this undeniable evidence, she turned pale and exclaimed, "I've already sold them, I can't give them back." My mother-in-law became frantic and almost in tears, not knowing if the items had been sold to someone else. When I said, "I will claim damages corresponding to the value," she shrieked, "That's a lie. No way." Although my collection was mostly inexpensive, it included some pieces from reputable stores. Among the stolen items were these high-end pieces. Probably, the locked and carefully stored items caught her eye. And their cash value must have been substantial. But this meant the claim amount was in the tens of thousands of dollars. An amount she couldn't afford as a homemaker. My father-in-law, trembling with rage, glared at me. Without reprimanding his wife for the theft, he suddenly snapped, "Don't mess around. You're going to sue over this trivial matter? If you've married into this family, you should listen. Instead of dressing up in toy-like trinkets, why don't you work on yourself more, maybe lose some weight?" My father-in-law, red-faced and yelling. It seemed to genuinely believe that once married into their family, I was their property. He was just angry that I wasn't complying with everything he said. "Enough with the jokes." He finally stood up, raising his hand towards me. I braced myself for the blow, but my father quickly stepped in, preventing it. Just then, the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the person. The person whom I had contacted. A lawyer specializing in divorce issues. I had been consulting with this lawyer since I first considered divorce, especially after the theft suspicions arose. He was an older, authoritative lawyer from a firm known for handling divorce cases effectively. His presence filled the room with a serious atmosphere, and Tom and his parents seemed diminished by the lawyer's authority. First, the lawyer explained that we would be seeking compensation from my mother-in-law for the theft. Then, he laid out the evidence of the unreasonable demands and treatment from Tom and his in-laws, including the diary I kept for such incidents, recordings I had made, and the footage from the small camera, all of which were admissible as evidence. He explained that we could claim damages for the mental anguish they caused. When the topic of divorce and the ensuing financial settlement came up, Tom, in a panic, got up and began pleading with me. "Throw away this stupid idea of divorce, we're in love, aren't we? You don't seriously want to split up?" As he groveled, his parents chimed in, "That's right, rethink this, you can still turn back." It was clear they hoped I'd withdraw the divorce, but I felt it was a waste of time to even engage with them. "We're not in love anymore, so that's inaccurate. I genuinely want to split up. If necessary, I'll consult my lawyer as many times as needed, even if it takes a long time or we end up in court." My firm rejection made Tom slump in defeat. Deflated, perhaps due to the authority of the lawyer's title, Tom's parents also quieted down and grudgingly agreed to the divorce. When the lawyer asked my mother-in-law why she stole, the shocking truth emerged. She was a reckless spender, and after splurging on shopping, she found herself short on living expenses. Unable to tell her husband, she planned to borrow money from Tom. He was on a business trip, so he told her, "Use the spare key. There's money in the bedroom drawer, take it." She did, but then noticed the rings I left in the bedroom and thought there might be more. Rummaging through my room, she found the jewelry box and the locked box, which she quickly took to a locksmith. I lost the key, she lied to get it opened, took the contents, and replaced the empty box. Every time she was short on cash, she would sneak into our house and steal more. Hearing this, my father-in-law turned on her, calling her the lowest of thieves. Despite their insults, my parents ushered them out of the house, and they left in a loud commotion. I never went back to that house, leaving the disposal of the furniture to them. My ex-husband and his parents began living there. But due to the financial claims I made, they couldn't afford to pay, and the house and land were eventually seized. I heard from neighbors they moved to a small apartment and lived poorly. However, my ex-husband told me that his father had been leaving all the housework to his mother, burdening her and then blaming her for the theft, causing her to run away with most of the family's money. In a panic, my ex-husband called, asking if I knew anything. I had no contact with her, so I advised, "You should file a missing person report," and hung up. The two left behind did indeed report to the police. My mother-in-law is being searched for as a missing person, but so far, she hasn't been found. There's been no word from her, but I wonder if she will eventually be returned to my father-in-law and ex-husband. It seems that they are constantly bickering and fighting with each other now that they have no one to take care of them. Even at the company, I hear rumors about my ex-husband Tom, who is in a different department. Due to the significant decrease in his living standard, he's making more mistakes at work and his performance in the sales department has plummeted. Since he used to get work by being nice to everyone, his mistakes and missteps with clients have led to his reassignment to a less desirable department, famous for grueling tasks like telemarketing. He's becoming increasingly exhausted. Moreover, after committing a major mistake by sending confidential company information in an email to a client, he completely lost his footing. This became a big issue in the company, with various departments scrambling to take measures, and Tom was held accountable and penalized. Eventually, feeling uncomfortable, he chose to resign voluntarily, as I was informed by a well-connected colleague. As for my father-in-law, apparently, he too became more irritable at work due to his fatigue. His juniors and subordinates started complaining of mental distress, leading to his demotion for not being suitable for his current position. This hurt his pride, and he chose to resign in anger. Given his reputation, re-employment was difficult, and later on, Tom tearfully contacted me, saying, "We are living off our savings. Can you help us?" But I had no choice but to refuse. The alimony was already paid, and there was no reason to continue any relationship with them. I politely declined and then blocked their numbers. Finally free from them, I decided to change jobs to a company that had been offering me a good position, as I was growing weary of being known as the divorced ex-wife at my current job. Also, not wanting to rely on my parents indefinitely, I used the alimony to move into an apartment closer to my new workplace. My parents, though worried, respected my desire to be independent and saw me off. I make sure to keep in touch with them and spend time with them during long vacations. In my new environment, my life began to improve. I think I have recovered mentally, so much so that I can think positively. I would like to get married again if I have a chance.